Hello, Rick. Welcome. As usual, we'll just wait for people to come in before we get started. Hello, Julie. Welcome. Hello, Douse. Thank you for preemptively saying audio and video sounds good. Very good. Hello, Jay. Welcome. All right, Rick. Well, we'll see if there's how many people join and what questions we have. I do have Majjhima Nikaya Sutta lined up, but we can always save that for another day. We'll see how it goes. Let's see. I'll bring up the sutta though. 557. Oh, subjects for contemplation. I don't even need to bring up the sutta. I know that one by heart. I need to know the Pali by heart for that one. Then it'll be fully complete. I knew that sounded familiar. All right. Hello, Karuna. Good to see you. Hope everything is good on your side. So we'll get started in about, my mind was going to say a week. Yeah, we'll get started in about a week. We'll get started in about a minute or so. Let's share screen. There we go. Speaking of which, how when I share the screen, is the text clear? I remember a while ago there was somebody who kept saying the text was blurry, wanted to have it bigger, something like that. So please give me some feedback on that if everything is fine for you when I share screen. It might have been just on his end. And we'll get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Na samane na brahmane na kapandaka vanibbake ladana samvibhajeti anang panang chabojanang tangveya vutika samoti ahunang purisadanang ekachanang na dadati ekachanang pavechati Tangve pade savasiti ahu medhavino jana subika vacho puriso sabbabuta nukampako amodamano pakireti deta tibasati yatapi me gotanayitva gajayitva pavasati Talang ninnang chapureti abhisandanto vavarina evang eva ide kacho pugalo hotitadiso dhammena samharitvana uttana digatang damang tapeti anya panyena sammasateva nibbake yatapi kumbo sampuno yatsa katsachi adhokato Vamate udakarang nisesang na tatta parirakati tateva yachake disva hinang ukatta majjime dadahi danang nisesang kumbho via adokato danang cha peya vajjancha atta chariya chaya eda Samma nattata cha dhamesu tatta tatta yataraham ete ko sangha loke rathasani vayayato anado balado hoti vattado hoti vanado yanado sukado hoti dipado hoti chakkudo socha sabbadado hoti yo dadati upasayang amatang dadocha sohoti yo dhammang anusasati. All right, English. Giving. Not with recluses or Brahmins, neither with the poor and needy, does the base man share his food, or give drink with sustenance. People say that the selfish man is like a drought, a rainless sky. But one who shares his wealth with some, but does not give gladly to others, is only like a local shower. In such a way the wise describe him. But one who rains down bountiful gifts, gladly giving here and there, out of compassion for all beings, who always says, give, give. This type of person is like a giant cloud filled with rain, thundering and pouring down refreshing water everywhere, drenching the highlands and the lowlands too, generous without distinction. With his wealth collected justly, won through his own efforts, he shares both food and drink with beings who are in need. Just as a pot filled with water, if overturned by anyone, pours out all its water and does not hold any back. Even so, when you see those in need, whether low, middle, or high, then give like the overturned pot, holding nothing back. Generosity, kind words, doing a good turn for others, and treating all people alike. These bonds of sympathy are to the world what the linchpin is to the chariot wheel. Giving food, one gives strength. Giving clothes, one gives beauty. Giving transport, one gives delight. Giving lamps, one gives sight. Giving shelter, one gives all. But one who instructs in the Dhamma, the excellent teaching of the Buddha, such a person gives ambrosia. All right, friends. Well, it is Monday night here in the East Coast of the United States, 7 p.m. So that means it's time for Dhammapalooza, the weekly Maggasekha community event where the community comes together to do a variety of different Dhamma-related activities. We just did some chanting to start everything off. We'll do some meditation later in between. Who knows what we'll do, because each Dhammapalooza is community guided. We can do questions, we can do Dhamma talks, we can do Q&A, Dhamma discussion between the community. It's all up to you guys who are with us today. So for the next couple minutes, if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat. If you have any recommendations or requests for a Dhamma talk, a topic you'd like me to talk about, you can put that in the chat, or a topic you'd like the community to talk about. We already have a sutta request, so that's there. And as always, I have a sutta in my back pocket, or we can do some kind of like sutta roulette. So we'll see how things go and how this week's, the July 1st Dhammapalooza here will go. Thank you all for your feedback on the sharing, the screen sharing and the text being clear. Very good. Hello, Gregory. Welcome. We'll give it another minute in the chat, see if anything comes up. There's only a few of us here right now, so. And then, if nothing comes up, we'll do the recommended or the requested sutta, which everyone here who is a regular of my yammerings on and Dhamma sharings, you're very familiar with this sutta. But Rick has put in a request, so it's a good thing to go over. Douse wants to send me a wall of text. You're welcome to type it out. Perhaps we can go over the sutta, and then after the sutta, I might answer it. All right. That was not that long, Douse, if you're really done. But yeah, I think we'll wait. We'll answer that after the sutta. We'll do the sutta first. So Rick has suggested we go over one of my favorite suttas. This was a sutta I read in my pretty early days. Maybe I came across it doing random sutta searches on Access to Insight. I'm not exactly sure how I came across it, but it was one of the early suttas I remember, and it was really so impactful. So impactful in its direct reflection of reality, because the teaching is that we don't reflect on these things. Most people don't. Most people would rather live with their heads in the sand. And the Buddha is quite clearly saying here, well, we should be reflecting on these things regularly. And so this was something that I took on pretty early in my practice as a regular reflection, and still do to this day, almost 20 years later. It's so important. So let's read. And most of you have heard the main area, the main section of this, but perhaps you haven't read the whole sutta, because it's actually much longer than you expect. So subjects for regular reviewing. Abhinna Paccavekittabha Sutta. Mendicants, a woman, a man, a layperson or a renunciate. So see here, this itya, that's woman, purisena, man, gahatena, gahata is the popped up, there it is, householder, and pabbajatena, pabbaja is when you become a samanera, when you go forth, the going forth. So whether you're a woman or a man, a householder or a one gone forth, one should reflect on these 5 often. What 5? I'm liable to grow old. I'm not exempt from going old. Now, I've actually done my own translation of this because I love it. I've done my own translation of most of the major things that I really love. And I forgot which the word here. Is it anati? Yeah. So this anatito is translated either as exempt or have not gone beyond. And for a while, for a pretty long time, I liked the translation exempt. Because it is something that's important for us to understand. Like just the average person, exempt is probably the better word, because our mind thinks that we're exempt, or it knows in a kind of way off, distant intellectual way that I'm not exempt, but in a pajanati way, and in like a really deep experiential knowing, if you look at the mind, it still thinks it's exempt. Okay, so that is, I think, a good translation for the average person, but I prefer not gone beyond. I am liable to grow old. I have not gone beyond old age. Why is that? Because when one becomes awakened, there's no more birth, so there's no more old age, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair, etc., etc. So it's a reflection of, I'm not awakened yet. I have not gone beyond this. There is a possible way to go beyond this. I can actually go beyond this. I can actually become exempt from this by becoming awakened. So it's a reflection of, I am not yet awakened. I have not yet gone beyond. So a woman or a man, a layperson or a renunciate should often review this. And this is paccavekittabham, should be considered, right? Should be reviewed. I don't know that the per se, oh yeah, there it is. Constant, frequent, regular, habitual. This should be a habitual practice. You should habitually reflect on this, right? Continuously, repeatedly, often. I am liable to get sick. I am not exempt from sickness. I'm liable to die. I am not exempt from death. So what we have here are these first three things. These first three things are at the core of so much Buddhist reflection, right? These are the first three. These are the three things that the Buddha reflects on in the suttas. The story, delicate, right? The story of him going out and seeing an old man, a sick man, a dead man, etc. That's later. That's not in the suttas. That's something that was created later. But in the Sutta Delicate, which I think is in Anguttara Nikaya as well, the Buddha explains that he reflects on, I'm liable to grow old. I'm liable to get sick. I'm liable to die. Would it be right for me to have disgust towards a sick person, a dead person, an old person, etc.? So these three things, these three reflections are also Devaduta, right? These are the divine messengers. So this is no small thing that the Buddha is telling us to reflect on often, to habitually reflect on these things. This is not a small thing. Reflecting on these three things brings insight, brings wisdom, because you are deciding to reflect on a reality that most people ignore and avoid. So this is very important. This is the importance of this is not to be minimized. Thank you, Jay, for putting in the sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 3.39 for delicate. It's a great sutta. This is where you do get the confirmation in the suttas. It is confirmed in the suttas that the Buddha had three mansions, right? Nowhere in the suttas is mentioned he's a prince. That's because there were no princes in Sakya. It was a republic. But that's a really good sutta to read. I highly suggest that. So, I am not exempt from these divine messengers, old age, sickness, and death. Reflecting on these things. Now, this one, I think, is often probably the hardest one for most people. I must be parted and separated from all I hold dear and beloved. Right? You will be separated from all the people, places, and experiences you love. People will also grow old, get sick, and die, as we're going to see as we go through the suttas. Right? It's not just you who are subject to these things. All beings are subject to these things. Because there will be separation. Right? This is an important reflection. If we have time, can we read AN 339? I think so. I think we can read 339. Hello, Norma. Good to see you. So it is impossible. How many times the Buddha says, and then the disciples say, has not the teacher taught us that which arises must cease? How could it be otherwise? It is absolutely impossible that you will not be separated from people, places, and experiences you love. That is an impossibility. Now, for a spouse or partner, loved one, whatever, you might say, well, if I'll die first, then I won't have to deal with it. I remember I would hear my parents would say that, especially my mom. My mom would be like, I hope I die first so I don't have to deal with, the loss of my father. Well, my mom got her wish. She did die first a couple of weeks back. So, but, this is a reflection of like, oh, this is quite painful. I hope I don't have to experience this. But my mom also experienced plenty of loss. There's no escaping this. There just isn't. Everyone will experience loss of some form or another. And I'm not even talking about loss to death, right? Loss of people coming in and out of your lives, being fired from jobs, etc. There's lots of loss. This is inevitable. This is built into the fabric of reality because sabbe sankhara anicca, all conditioned things are impermanent, unstable, and undependable. So this is inescapable that you will experience separation. Now, this, in my opinion, is the most important one, the fifth. Because the first four are just simply explaining reality. This is the nature of your existence. No matter how you try to avoid it, no matter how you try to escape it, no matter how you try to overcome it, whatever, these are inescapable. So knowing that these are inescapable, how do you choose to act? That's what this fifth one is. You're going to get sick, you're going to grow old, you're going to die, so is everybody else, you're going to experience loss. How are you going to act? What's the most meaningful, the best way of acting in this situation? So the Buddha is telling us here that we should be reflecting constantly on our actions. Right? I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma. Karma is my relative. Karma is my refuge. I shall be the heir of whatever deeds, whatever karma I do, whether good or bad. This is really skillful or evil. Right? Or good, yeah, good or evil, because kalyanam, good. Papa is not just unskillful. Papa is like evil. It is a word in and of itself. It means like real bad stuff. So a woman or a man, a layperson or a renunciate should often review this. Hello, JRF. Welcome. I'm glad you love the sutta. You can thank Rick for requesting that we go through it. So yes, it's a very, very beautiful, important sutta. All right. So these 5 things should be reflected upon regularly. You should make a habit of reflecting on these things. I'm subject to old age, sickness, death. I will experience separation and loss. I'm the owner of my actions. So how do I choose to act? Of course, we get the best answer from the Pabbatopama Sutta, which is the simile of the mountains, where the Buddha explains that just like mountains coming in from all 4 sides, crushing everything in its wake, Old age, sickness, and death are doing that. They're coming in, crushing everything in their wake. What to do? And the king wisely says, what else is there to do but to practice Dhamma and do good deeds? There's your answer. No matter what happens in life, what do? Practice Dhamma and do good deeds. Can't go wrong with that. And then you practice Dhamma, practice the Noble Eightfold Path, especially Satipatthana, then you will have the clarity and ability to skillfully act in better ways. So, all right, continuing on. What is the advantage for a woman or a man, a lay person or a renunciate, of often reviewing this? I'm liable to grow old. I'm not exempt from old age. There are sentient beings who, intoxicated with the vanity of youth. This is also in that delicate sutta. The Buddha says he recognized that he is intoxicated with youth, intoxicated with health, and intoxicated with life. Right? These three intoxications are also to be overcome, to be let go. So there are sentient beings who, intoxicated with the vanity of youth, do bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. Reviewing their subject often, they entirely give up the vanity of youth, or at least reduce it. Now, how many bad things have people done to remain young? Right? Even throughout history, even to today, like rich people, there's this view that if they, like in the old days, medieval days, like you bathed in the blood of young people or whatever. Now these days it's like, get the adrenochrome or something in there. This is reality. This is not actually like, conspiracy theorists, but this is like, there's all kinds of unskillful things people can do to try to be young. Even if it's not physical, they try to act in ways that they think that, of their youth, and they can act unskillfully. Reviewing this subject often, they entirely give up the vanity of youth, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage for a woman or a man, a layperson or a renunciate, of often reviewing this. I am liable to grow old. I'm not exempt from old age. Hello, Jayantha. Welcome. What is the advantage of often reviewing this? I am liable to get sick. I am not exempt from getting sick. There are beings who, drunk on the vanity of health, do bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. Reviewing the subject often, they entirely give up the vanity of health, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage of often reviewing this. I'm liable to get sick. I'm not exempt from sickness. The vanity of health. It's an interesting way of putting it, isn't it? Vanity. Let me see. Yeah, intoxicated, proud of health. Intoxication or proudness about vanity is a pretty good way of putting it for health, I think. All the ways that people do vain, prideful things, unskillful things in the search for health, the intoxication, the belief that you're not supposed to have pandemics or things like that. Everything's supposed to be mostly fine. You get a cold every once in a while or a flu every once in a while. No, every 100 years there's a pretty big pandemic, or people, millions upon millions of people have died from various things because of the health being attacked, being sick, diseases, viruses, etc. This is the normal way of life. We only in like the modern, West or rich countries that have modern technology, our modern technology has been able to kind of minimize a lot of that. But just 100, 200 years ago, there was a possibility of getting an infection from just a basic cut and then that turning into something more. Right? So this is an interesting reflection. What is the advantage of often reviewing this? I'm liable to die. I'm not exempt from death. There are sentient beings who, drunk on the vanity of life, do bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. Reviewing this often, they entirely give up the vanity of life, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage of often reviewing this. I am liable to die. I am not exempt from death. What is the advantage of reviewing this? I must be parted and separated from all I hold dear and beloved. There are sentient beings who, aroused by desire and lust for their dear and beloved, do bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. Reviewing this subject often, they entirely give up desire and lust for their dear and beloved, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage of often reviewing this. I must be parted and separated from all I hold dear and beloved. What is the advantage of often reviewing like this? I am the owner of my deeds and heir to my deeds. Deeds are my womb, my relative, and my refuge. I shall be the heir of whatever deeds that I do, whether good or bad. There are sentient beings who do bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. Reviewing this subject often, they entirely give up bad conduct, or at least reduce it. This is the advantage for a woman or a man, a layperson or a renunciate, of often reviewing like this. I am the owner of my deeds and heir to my deeds. Deeds are my womb, my relative, and my refuge. I shall be the heir of whatever deeds I do, whether good or bad. Then the noble disciple reflects thus. It's not just me who is liable to grow old, not being exempt from old age. For all sentient beings grow old according to their nature, as long as they come and go, pass away, and return, are reborn. When they review the subject, often the path is born in them. Muggo. They become a Maggasekha, a student of the path. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate underlying tendencies. It's not just me who is liable to get sick. Not being exempt from sickness, for all sentient beings get sick according to their nature. As long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject often, the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. It's not just me who is liable to die, not being exempt from death. For all sentient beings die according to their nature. As long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject often, the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate underlying tendencies. It's not just me who must be parted and separated from all I hold dear and beloved. For all sentient beings must be parted and separated from all they hold dear and beloved. As long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. So as long as, that's basically saying, as long as they're not awakened, they will have to experience this. Okay? When they review this subject often, the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. It's not just me who shall be the owner of my deeds and heir to my deeds. For all sentient beings shall be the owners of their deeds and heirs to their deeds, as long as they come and go, pass away, and are reborn. When they review this subject often, the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. By doing so, they give up the fetters and eliminate the underlying tendencies. For others, sickness is natural, and so are old age and death, though this is how their nature is. Ordinary people feel disgusted. See, this is a callback. This is exactly what is seen in Delicate Sutta. That's how these suttas are like this. Though this is how their nature is, ordinary people feel disgusted. If I were to be disgusted with creatures whose nature is such, it would not be appropriate for me, since my life is just the same. Living in such a way, I understood the truth without attachments. I mastered all vanities of health or of youth, and even of life. Seeing renunciation as a sanctuary, zeal sprung up in me, and I looked to extinguishment. Now I'm unable to indulge in sensual pleasures. There's no turning back. I'm committed to the spiritual life. All right, sadhu, sadhu, very good. So I think we have time to go to the next one. However, I do want to answer Dowse's question because it's late for him, so he'll probably end up having to drop out soon. So I do want to answer his question first, at least. And since it's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning for him, maybe a little bit longer, we will read 339 next. All right, so let's see if I can explain it in short. It seems like various concepts within mind appear to have something like a progress bar. Lust seems to be a good example. One might not be lustful, but entertain some ideas regarding following it. And even though one might stop thinking about it, then if one were to pick it up in mind, even like a week, it's like the progress was not lost. The mind picks up from where it is cultivating it and stops mid-growth, but it already grew, ready to start where it left off. Thought it may be something to think about. Though it's rather interesting, for even if mind might be free of lust or anything else, these ideas that were previously entertained are bound to most likely be of to do some damages. How they arise seems heavily to me to be based on perception, aka the snake in the rope, but their cessation seems hard to observe for me. Well, the cessation is to observe cessation, you're reflecting on something that's not there. Right? In Satipatthana, you're supposed to know when the mind is full of lust and when the mind is not full of lust, when there is no lust in the mind. So you know both when it's there and when it's not. So about the progress bar thing, this is when we're talking about dependent origination, you may or may not have heard my swing simile. When we have things arise in the mind, like a lustful thought or a hateful thought, whatever, we normally, unmindfully, on autopilot, we feed those. We give it energy, we give it effort, we indulge in it, we like it. And that's giving it momentum. That's giving it that energy. And what happens, just like you see like in cartoons or whatever, some videos where, kids on a swing, they push, 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 push. And if they're pushed far enough, they go all the way around like a circle. right? You push it, you keep giving it momentum, you keep pushing it, and it comes back around again. It might be a day later, it might be a week later, it might be many weeks, months later, who knows? But it has the energy and the momentum of your previous interactions with it. And so each time it comes back stronger, harder to say no to, harder to see clearly, harder to fight against. Conversely, so maybe talking about progress bars, it's like you keep leveling up that craving, that lust, that hatred. You keep leveling it up. Conversely, when you understand this, and then you understand the gratification, the danger, and the escape, you see, oh, this thought is causing me suffering. Either in my mind or because of I do actions that cause me suffering and harm, etc. And so then you choose to not engage. You choose to starve it. You choose to not give it any energy or momentum. And it comes around, and you're like, hands off. And eventually it goes away. When it comes back again, it's just a little bit weaker. And so each time it comes around, as you don't give it any energy, as you don't give it any momentum, the unskillful things. Skillful things, you want to keep giving that momentum, keep, pushing it and giving it good momentum. But unskillful things, nope, I'm abandoning it. I'm letting it go. Just like from Dvaita Vitakka Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 19, the two kinds of thoughts, right? And the Buddha says, when I saw that this thought is harmful, I abandon it. I let it go. So when it's unskillful, you don't give it any energy, don't give it any momentum. And each time it comes around, it still keeps coming around. And you don't just stop it, because it has so much momentum from past lives and everything. It has so much momentum that it's going to keep coming. The swing has to, it's getting slower, but it still has the momentum to keep coming. But each time, instead of pushing the swing, you're like letting it go, and then the swing gets slower until eventually it can't go over again, just kind of until it stops. So that's the process of abandoning unskillfulness. That's the process of I don't know. There's no concept of a de-leveling, I guess, in video games or whatever, progress bars. But that's the way. That's the how you undo it. Regarding the we've been going through Mahasatipatthana Sutta in the mornings, morning monastery experience. It is repetitive. So what you're doing is you're trying to observe how the feelings arise, how they cease, right? Observing the craving related to those feelings. It's just the repetition is just the same framework. If you go on like Sutta Central, I'm sure all of that repetition is kind of ellipsed. But I guess this was Bhante Gunaratana's translation. So from the Bhavana Bandhana. So I'm assuming he wanted it all to be fully translated. And I actually appreciate that. I like that. Because what it's saying, like the location of the investigation is changing. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, eye consciousness, eye contact, the craving, all of that's changing, but the framework for investigation is the same. You're investigating all of the words that mean mindfulness. You're investigating the rise and fall. You're investigating the gratification, danger, and escape. You're investigating the root, Yoniso Manasikara. Right? You are trying to understand and experience through all the different avenues you can understand it. That's what is going on in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. Jay says, is karma as my refuge? This is going back to the sutta we read, mainly for when we do good deeds. Then we could take refuge that we have good vipaka. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, it is a reflection on bad deeds too. Well, you don't have much of a refuge if your bad deeds don't give you much of a refuge. I mean, your good deeds don't give you much of a refuge either, to be honest with you. This is why the Buddha says there is no refuge in samsara. The only safety, the only security is the supreme safety and security of nibbana. Any refuge, even from your good deeds, is only a temporary lacking refuge. But it's sure as heck better than the alternative. There's no doubt about that. Julie, if you I wrote an article or I made a video about the swing. I think that's so. If you like put up, Maggasekha or Bhante Jayasara, you swing simile, it'll come up. So I think actually it's from me explaining it during a morning monastery experience. Hello, Karuna. Oh, hello, Ronald. Welcome. Bhante, sometimes the 5 recollections feel like they're going through the motions. Yeah, if you do it enough, it does feel that way. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna die. Do you have thoughts on reflecting more meaningfully on what the sutta says? When they review this subject, often the path is born in them. They cultivate, develop, and make much of it. So what I would do is switch up or come up with new visuals, new reflections, right? There's the, I am subject to death. I'm not exempt from death, but you have to expand on that. It's like an exploration of all the ways that you're exempt from death, right? And over time, that will change. You'll start thinking of things, and you're like, "Oh, that's a good one. I'll use that for a while," and then that'll kind of get a little stale. And then another one, you think of another one, and that'll go, eventually. So it's, it's a matter of kind of trying to keep seeing. If something becomes stale, you have to maybe look at it from a different angle, look at it from a different perspective, have a different contemplation. That's what I would suggest. All right, well, we've come to the end, so why don't we read Delicate? We have some time. Let's read Delicate, because this is a wonderful sutta. I'm quite energetic. Well, I'm doing pretty good today in general, but I think the sutta selections bring up lots of energy in me as well. So let's share. A delicate lifestyle. My lifestyle was refined, right? So it's like, what do they have? Like, rich people or whatever, they're refined things in life or whatever, right? My lifestyle was delicate, mendicants, most delicate, extremely delicate. In my father's home, lotus ponds were made just for me. In some, blue water lilies blossomed, while in others there were pink or white lotuses, just for my benefit. I only use sandalwood from Kazi. What sandalwood from Kazi is seen all over the suttas. This is like top tier good stuff. And my turbans, jackets, sarongs, and upper robes also came from Kasi. I don't know. Kasi was maybe like the Milan, Italy, of the fashion world of ancient northern India, I guess. Who knows? I don't know anything about fashion. And a white parasol was held over me night and day with the thought, don't let cold, heat, grass, dust, or damp bother him. I had 3 stilt longhouses, pasada. So stilt longhouses, this is an interesting translation by Bhante Sujato. I'd like to wonder where he says that. But pasada is where some people translate it as castle or mansion, right? Palace here. Oh, building with pillars. That's where probably he gets the stilt longhouses. But 3 mansions for the 3 seasons. These are the 3 seasons of ancient India. Gemhana, Hema. Winter is Hema. Hemana. Gimhana is summer. And Vasana. This is where the Vasa comes from, the rainy season. And one for the rainy season. I stayed in a stilt longhouse without coming downstairs for the 4 months of the rainy season, where I was entertained by musicians, none of them men. While the bond servants, the slaves, workers, and staff in other houses are given rough gruel with pickles to eat, in my father's home they are given fine rice with meat. Amid such prosperity and such a delicate lifestyle, I thought, when an unlearned, ordinary person, this is the Patujana, this is us, this is talking about basically an unawakened person, a regular person who is not a Maggasekha. When the unlearned ordinary person who is liable to grow old, not being exempt from old age, sees someone else who is old, they're horrified, repelled, and disgusted, overlooking the fact that they themselves are in the same situation. But since I too am liable to grow old, it would not be appropriate for me to be horrified, embarrassed, and disgusted when I see someone else who is old. Reflecting like this, I entirely gave up the vanity of youth. This sounds familiar. We just went over that. When an unlearned, ordinary person who is liable to get sick, not be exempt from sickness, sees someone else who is sick, they're horrified, repelled, and disgusted, overlooking the fact that they themselves are in the same situation. What is the Buddha doing here? The Buddha is doing their 5 reflections. The Buddha is having these reflections. And then he later says these should be reflected upon by everybody very often. Make it a habit. see someone who is sick, they're horrified, repelled, and disgusted, overlooking the fact that they themselves are in the same situation. But since I too am liable to get sick, it would not be appropriate for me to be horrified, embarrassed, and disgusted when I see someone else who is sick. Reflecting like this, I entirely gave up the vanity of health. When an unlearned, ordinary person who is liable to die, not being exempt from death, sees someone else who is dead, they're horrified, repelled, and disgusted, overlooking the fact that they themselves are in the same situation. But since I too am liable to die, it would not be appropriate for me to be horrified, embarrassed, and disgusted when I see someone else who is dead. Reflecting like this, I entirely gave up the vanity of life. There are these three vanities. So the word here, mada, intoxication, vanity, pride, conceit. What three? The vanity or conceit of youth, health, and life. Intoxicated with the vanity of youth, an unlearned, ordinary person does bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. Intoxicated with the vanity of health, intoxicated with the vanity of life, an unlearned, ordinary person does bad things by way of body, speech, and mind. When their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. Intoxicated with the vanity of youth, health, and life, a mendicant rejects the training and returns to the lesser life. Right? This is one of the reasons why monks will disrobe. They are intoxicated by the conceits, one of the conceits of youth, health, or life. For others, sickness is natural, and so are old age and death. Though this is how their nature is, ordinary people feel disgusted. If I were to be disgusted with creatures whose nature is such, it would not be appropriate for me, since my life is just the same. Living in such a way, I understood the truth without attachments. I mastered all vanities of health, of youth, and even of life, seeing renunciation as a sanctuary. Zeal sprang up in me as I looked to extinguishment. Now I'm unable to indulge in sensual pleasures. There's no turning back. I've committed to the spiritual life. All right. Rick says, I've been experiencing real loss due to my chronic illness, getting worse, getting older, and less able to take care of responsibilities. How do we know when things to let go of, which things to work hard to keep as important parts of our lives? This is the nature of getting older. Even if you didn't have chronic illness, eventually you have to stop driving. Eventually you can't do all the things you used to be able to do on your own. Eventually, I was going to get my glasses. Eventually you need to either make things a larger font or wear glasses. This is just the nature of getting older. And this is a very hard thing for people to deal with. I didn't see it myself personally, but I heard stories about my grandparents because they all died pretty young. And like my one grandfather was stubborn and didn't want to give up his driver's license. My other grandfather gave it up gracefully. Right? These are things that as we get older or as we get sick, chronic illnesses, etc., we have to be able to let go of. I was just talking to someone I was talking to, a friend of theirs or somebody that they knew just died of ALS. And actually one of my last girlfriends before I, kind of got deep into the practice and then became a monk, she actually died of ALS when I think I was maybe 2 or 3 years as a monk. When I would come home, I would visit her because she became a friend. So I watched the progress of her essentially losing the ability to walk, losing the ability to move her hands, and losing ability to talk. Like, this gradual process of everything is being taken from you. There's really nothing you can do about it. The last time I saw her was about a month before she died. And she was basically like, her daughter kind of knew to understand like what the grunts meant and things like that, but she was basically almost trapped in her, in her mind. That was it. There's really very little ability to communicate outside. And this is how life goes. So we have the choice, right? Do we get agitated and do we fight against it, or do we work on letting it go? Okay. Do we want to, how much suffering do we want to cause ourselves by holding on? And that the dynamic of, as you say, what to let go of and what to work hard for, well, that's going to be a choice. That's going to be your own personal choice depending on each situation. You have to kind of reflect, well, is this worth holding on to? Is this worth the extra effort and energy to do? And the answer might be yes. So you try to do it, even in your diminished capacity. And then maybe the answer is no. And you say, okay, you know what? In this lifetime, I'm done with this. And you let it go. Julie, a fear of the jungle and wildlife has been arising me at the thought of staying in Sri Lanka. I'm having difficulty shaking it off. How to let go and not to worry? I feel like camping in tents for now. So it's a fear of the unknown. Like, even though I've spent many a night in the forest in the East Coast of America, when I started living in the tents in California for the 3 months, I had to learn, well, okay, well, what are the specific issues of this area? What if I see a mountain lion, which are around, which you don't really see much on the East Coast? So what I would say is, to help your mind, you should learn about the specific things you should take care of when you're in that area. What is the nature of the snakes that are there? Various poisonous animals, etc. Right? You should spend some time to learn about the specific dangers and concerns of that environment. And as you do so, that will give you some confidence. Okay, if this happens, I know what to do this. If that happens, I know to do that, etc. If I was staying in a jungle of Sri Lanka, I know nothing about what's in the jungle of Sri Lanka. So I'd be doing a lot of research, no doubt. Of course, I also know that my metta will also be strong. Practicing, because I have lots of experience of practicing giving lots of metta to the beings in the forests and mountains of America. So at least I can, I might not know the specifics of the beings in Sri Lanka, but I know that the power of metta for the beings in the forest is very important. And the power of your mindfulness of being aware of your surroundings as you're walking through. Most of the time, most animals want nothing to do with you, especially if they're not used to being around humans. They want nothing to do with you. You will never see them. The most dangerous animals tend to be the smallest ones, the ones that are harder to see, the ones that are, harder to avoid. It's like with ticks. The big ticks are not the ones that give you Lyme's disease. It's the ones that are like a pinprick that do. Right? Oftentimes, it's the smaller things you have to worry about. And then, in addition to the metta, in addition to understanding the environment and being mindful in that environment, there is also the level of, even though I know all about these animals, there could be that small chance that an animal has rabies or the animal's really hungry and your time is up. That is a possibility. If you are in nature, one of the things that nature teaches you is that you do not matter. It doesn't matter, you're not special. You will die. That's why you have like all these cool channels like Nature is Metal and things like that. You just observe, you go to like those channels and you just see like animals eating each other and things like that. Nature is brutal. People have watched too much Disney movies and Looney Tunes, like, oh, the bear is so nice and things like that. No, the bear will eat you while you're alive, starting from your anus, and you will be alive for hours as it's eating you. That's brutal. That's horrible. Frankly, this is why I say I'd rather die from a mountain lion. At least they jump from you where you won't see it. They'll just grab your neck, crack it, and you're dead. Much easier, much nicer death than going from a bear. But most of the time, bears aren't going to bother you. So there is a level of letting go and a level of understanding the possibility that, yeah, you can die. It is possible. But if you have your metta, your mindfulness, and your understanding of the environment, chances are you'll be just fine. Rick asks, I know I want to keep living an inspired practice. How do I prioritize the practical living situation and the important things and beings in our lives? Well, you answered your own question. It's prioritize. You have to triage. You know what triaging is? I remember I was a police explorer and I had friends who were like EMTs and things like that. And I would go with them to these mock triages. And this would be like if there's a mass casualty event, not just like shooting, but if there's like an explosion or a building falls down or whatever. And they'd have like 20 or 30 people all like lying on the ground, basically like, okay, and you'd have to go around and you have to figure out, okay, can they be saved? If they can't be saved, well, guess what? They get a black marker. Basically, you're just going to let them die, right? They're basically done. There's nothing you can do with them. There's the black marker, and then there's the red, the green, whatever, etc. And so they mark out like, okay, this person can be saved, and they're the most in danger. So this is the person we have to deal with right now. So that's what part of the training was, is figuring out who we need to just let die, who can wait a little bit, and who needs to be taken care of right now. Right? And so the older you get, you have to triage these things. You have to figure out, well, what's most important? I don't have enough time left. I only have so many hours in the day. What's the most important thing? And this is why, even though, even though somebody might be a nice person or whatever, there might not necessarily be a total fool, but you're like, I don't have time for all the fools, but I also don't have time for this person. I'm letting them out of my life. I'm not going to bother with this. I'm not going to bother with that. So you have to figure out what's best for you. I can't answer that question. Prioritizing, triaging, investigating, and trial by error. Do these things, and then you can know for yourself. JRF says, I feel bad sometimes because I think I have worked through enough with this to be able to let things go, but sometimes life is sticky and they won't let go without a fight. Well, yeah, well, what happens is, as you gain wisdom into your unskillful actions, your unskillful habits, responses, etc., you actually learn, you actually get to have some measure of ability and control over them in regular situations. But then a new situation arises, a new variable, a new factor arises that you're not as experienced in, and the defilements pounce and you don't do as well. That's fine. That's normal. That's just, okay, now I have to understand this in this specific situation and overcome it in this specific situation. And so as you experience it and as you work with it, then you master that situation as well. That's the practice. You keep doing that. You keep doing that over and over again. Whatever you master one thing, that's fine. You've mastered that. Something new arises. Especially as your practice deepens and you get rid of all the gross stuff. The gross level of stuff is completed. Well, guess what? There's another level. There's a subtle layer. Now you're in the more subtle, deeper defilements, and they have their way with you. It's like, oh, you think you're going to go up against us? I don't think so. As my Italian grandparents used to say, "I'm no think so." The defilements will drag you around like two strong, like in the suttas, two strong men that can do anything they want with you. Right? That doesn't mean that you haven't come far. You've come far. You've really done. And this is what I have to remind myself, because I'm like, oh no, it's not like you've done a lot of practice and you've come a lot of far, but you're at a level where you are beyond your competency level. You are not there yet. So this is your new training. This is your new battleground. This is your new area of fighting Mara. This is where you do it. And you have to go ever more subtle layers, ever more deeper layers. That's the practice. Okay. Gregory says Kanda Parita Sutta. Yes, very good. Practice Kanda Parita Sutta, which is also just metta, same thing. Dow says, romanticizing the life of animals. How nice it would be to be an animal. Well, my father, interestingly enough, um, even though, like, my parents are very Catholic and, there's no rebirth in Catholicism, my father would, look at the family dog and be like, man, it would be so nice to come back as a dog, just to sit around all day, not to do anything, no problems. Um, yeah, I suppose if you're going to have to be in the animal realm, being a pet in a good family is a lot better than being an animal on the Serengeti. That's for sure. Thank you for those reflections, Karuna. For Rick, very good. This is why I love having a skilled community, because then I don't even have to do most of the work. That's why we have sutta hunters on the Discord. Right? People who are skillful, lay people who are can skillfully point out suttas is a valuable thing. All right. So I think we've reached the end of the questions. Why don't we do 10 minutes of meditation? Because even if it's a short, meditation, we should always do meditation during Dhammapalooza. So we'll meditate silently for about 10 minutes and then we'll do Dhammapada and close out. So let's practice for a bit. All right. Open your eyes, becoming familiar with the room around you and the people in it. We will read some Dhammapada and then close out. Pupavaga, flowers. Who shall overcome this earth, this realm of Yama? That's the Lord of Death that asks if you've seen the old age, sickness, and death. That's from the Devadutta Sutta, the realm of Yama, and this sphere of men and gods. Who shall bring to perfection the well-taught path of wisdom, as an expert garland maker would his floral design? A striver on the path shall overcome this earth, this realm of Yama, and this sphere of men and gods. The striver on the path shall bring to perfection the well-taught path of wisdom, as an expert garland maker would his floral design. Realizing that this body is like froth, penetrating its mirage like nature, and plucking out Mara's flower-tipped arrows of sensuality. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The flower-tipped arrows of sensuality. It's like Cupid. I mean, these days you only see Cupid during like Valentine's Day, right? Mara as little Cupid shooting the arrows of sensuality. Go beyond sight of the king of death. As a mighty flood sweeps away the sleeping village, so death carries away the person of distracted mind who only plucks the flowers of pleasure. The destroyer brings under his sway the person of distracted mind who, insatiate and sensual and sense desires, only plucks the flowers of pleasure. As a bee gathers honey from the flower without injuring its color or fragrance, even so the sage goes on his alms round in the village. Let none find fault with others. Let none see the omissions and commissions of others, but let one see one's own actions done and undone. Like beautiful flowers full of color but without fragrance, even so fruitless are the fair words of one who does not practice them. Like beautiful flowers full of color and also fragrant, even so the fruitful are the fair words of one who practices them. As from a great heap of flowers many garlands can be made, even so should many good deeds be done by one born a mortal. Not the sweet smell of flowers, nor even the fragrance of sandal, tagara, or jasmine blows against the wind, but the fragrance of the virtuous blows against the wind. Truly, the virtuous man pervades all directions with the fragrance of his virtue. Of all the fragrances, sandal, tagara, blue lotus, and jasmine, the fragrance of virtue is the sweetest. Faint is the fragrance of tagara and sandal, but excellent is the fragrance of virtuous, wafting even amongst the gods. Mara never finds the path of the truly virtuous, who abide in heedfulness and are freed by perfect knowledge. Upon a heap of rubbish in the roadside ditch blooms a lotus, fragrant and pleasing. Even so, on the rubbish heap of blinded mortals, the disciple of the Supremely Enlightened One shines with resplendent wisdom. All right, friends. So let's close out. So if you are joining us for the first time and you'd like to find out more information or be made aware of when we do more streams and more activities, you can go to the website listed on the screen, maggasekha.org, maggasekha.org. This is my headquarters. This is the one-stop shop for anything to do with myself and the organization I'm building, Maggasekha. This is where you can find all the links to various social media, various different websites that Maggasekha is on. And you can also find out all of the activities. I have retreats coming up at the end of this month and the end of July, end of August, end of September. So you can find out information on that. You can find out information on my travels, when I have new streams, videos, articles, etc. You can find out all that information on the website listed. So why don't we now share merit? Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, soka patta chane soka, huntu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata cha mehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasata chabumata deva naga mahiddhika, punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Well, that comes to the end of another Dhammapalooza. Very energetic, good on both of our parts. Lots of questions, lots of discussion, helping each other out in the chat. Love to see it. Keep it coming. And we Suki Hotu. May you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which, if I'm alive, could be tomorrow morning for a morning monastery experience, or perhaps next Saturday for on Insight Timer, Sunday on the Discord for our Suttas Monday Sutta readings, or next Monday for another Dhammapalooza. So have a good week.